All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to say I'm joined right now by longtime friend and advisor and confidant of Donald Trump, who is now the President of the United States. He's also the author of a great book, The Making of the President 2016. He has his own radio show. We'll talk about where you could see that and hear that in a minute. Roger Stone. Hello, sir.
Steve, great to be with you.
Great to be with you. And you are the man of the moment because you turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, and they're talking about Roger Stone. Of course, in the aftermath of the firing of the FBI director, stories appeared, New York Times, Politico, that you were very happy. Friends of yours were quoted, associates of yours were quoted saying Roger pushed for this with the president to fire Comey. And then I guess Gloria Borger on CNN said that you played a role in the firing. To which Donald Trump responded on Twitter, fake news, the CNN report is not true. Roger Stone had nothing to do with the firing. So set us straight.
Well, first of all, Steve, I am not the source of either the Politico or the CNN stories, although reporters at those outlets both told me they had multiple sources. It's always been my policy not to comment on any conversation I may or may not have had with the president, because if the president can't count on confidentiality, well, I'm smart enough to know that any conversations you would have with the president would soon end. That said, I strongly support the action that the president has taken. Mr. Comey has become a selective prosecutor, as it were, investigating the things that he wants to investigate, ignoring egregious crimes by the Clintons. He was becoming a little J. Edgar Hoover, a power unto himself, not responsive to the executive, not responsive to the Congress. I really think we got to the point where the president couldn't trust him, and therefore he fired him. I support the president's actions 100%. Steve, as you know, since you referenced my book, The Making of the President 2016, Donald Trump is not a conventional politician. No one tells Donald Trump what to do. No one is, creating ideas, his thoughts, his actions. He is his own man. And in this case, he's taken strong action, and I strongly support it.
Are you surprised? One more. I don't want to belabor it. I don't. And I know, how close you've been over the years and to this day with the President of the United States. Are you surprised that finally, or not finally, but under these circumstances, you'd be the subject of his tweet, that what he saw on CNN, and to be fair, what was reported in other places, but what he saw, I guess, on CNN would get under his skin for some reason? Are you surprised to see that tweet?
Well, look, anybody who takes credit for things that Donald Trump does is making a mistake, because as I indicate, he is his own man. Frankly, I'm pleased that he took this action, because watching that hearing on May 3rd, Mr. Comey looked to me like he was out of control. Now you've got this entire false narrative where the Democrats, who were seething against Comey and claiming that he acted irresponsible and improperly by making disclosures about Hillary's email during the campaign, are now suddenly upset that Donald Trump has fired Mr. Comey. Talk about incredible hypocrisy. What
about the timing? The question is being asked, well, why didn't he fire him when he got into office? Why right now? Why do you believe it happened when it did? And could the man who wrote the report that to the Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, could he have, in the 2 weeks that he's been there, have done a thorough enough investigation to warrant the results of being put in that letter, going to the Attorney General Sessions, and then in turn to the President, and then the firing? You think 2 weeks was enough time for Rod to gain everything he needed to gain to make that decision?
Perhaps it's the first time the President has seen a compelling case for the dismissal of Mr. Comey. It was disturbing immediately after the election when the President announced that he was not in favor of the prosecution of the Clintons for their various crimes connected to the racketeering and grafting at the Clinton Foundation. Then more recently, in an interview with Maria Bartiromo, on MSNBC, or pardon me, on Fox, he seems to have moved from that, which is a good thing because no person is above the law, Steve, and the process, the judicial process, should go forward. No one who's watched the antics of Mr. Comey in the whole phony Russian collusion issue could be comfortable with him as FBI director. Let me say yet again, Senator Warner, Senator Feinstein, Senator Franken, Congressman Schiff, Congressman Speier, Congressman Himes, and Congressman Swallow. They have nothing, zero, no evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. They have supposition, they have conjecture, they have projection, but what they don't have is evidence that would stand up in a court of law. And to the extent that Mr. Comey continued or allowed them to continue this charade, it is just as well that we're going to get a new FBI director.
Are you implying that you believe the new FBI director will somehow put a stop to the congressional investigation?
All I'm asking is the new FBI director give us an objective report on whether he can find any evidence. The Senate Intelligence Committee is a political body, and this is a political football. We need a non-politicized law enforcement agency, the FBI, to make a determination. I still, watching the Sally Yates testimony, the former acting attorney general, she said that General Flynn spoke numerous times with the Russian ambassador. She never told us under what authority the president's defense intelligence advisor was under surveillance. And she never told us what the content of one of those calls. I don't see anything improper in General Flynn speaking to the Russian ambassador. It would be well within the purview of his job. So again, we have what they used to call insinuendo, no facts.
You told me, I'm sorry, you told me recently that you received 2 letters, one from the House Intelligence Committee and one from the Senate Intelligence Committee to testify. And you said you would try to set parameters where that would be public. You wanted it public. Where are we with that? Is there a date? Have you agreed? Have you reached an agreement?
The Senate Intelligence Committee contacted me with a request for documents in some broad specific categories. We will fully comply with their request. Yesterday, the House sent a similar request. We will also comply. I think I made it very clear. I'm not afraid to testify, not in the slightest. I want to testify. I don't require a subpoena. I don't require immunity. But I do want my testimony to be in public. I believe these Democrats, Feinstein, Warner, Franken, Schiff, who's completely full of Schiff, these guys have defamed me in public, and I should have the chance to respond in public, defend myself in public. Steve, it's the American way.
Have they requested that you testify? Have they called on you to testify?
Have agreed to discuss testimony subject to conditions. Well, that's correct. My conditions, not behind closed doors where they can, where they can interpret for the media and misrepresent what you said and what transpired. Let's do this out in the open. I like transparency. Let's put the lie to this entire Russian collusion myth once and for all.
But there's nothing set. You are not set to testify before.
My lawyers will be talking to their lawyers to attempt to negotiate such test. That's where we are. Back
to Comey. Many on the left are saying this is Nixonian. Now you got the Nixon poster right over your shoulder. And of course, you were there with Richard Nixon. You remember the Saturday Night Massacre. You remember Archibald Cox, special prosecutor, what happened to him. Is this in any way reminiscent, or is there any analogy to be made to what happened back then?
I think it's apples and oranges. It's not even close. Watergate had been at full throttle for 18 months when Nixon fired Archibald Cox. Cox was specifically investigating Nixon. Even Comey has admitted there's no evidence of wrongdoing by the president pertaining to the Russians. And so far, the FBI, to our knowledge, has turned up nothing in this regard. So the idea that the president was firing Comey to head off an investigation into Russian collusion, as alleged in the headline in today's New York Times, I think that's a false narrative. The president dispatched Mr. Comey because he no longer had confidence in him, because Mr. Comey was becoming a power unto himself with an agenda that was clearly his. He was not responsive to the Congress. He was not responsive to the executive. He was deciding what cases he would talk about and what cases he wouldn't talk about. Given his long history as a cover-up artist, covering up the Sandy Berger affair when he was a prosecutor at the Justice Department for the Clintons, covering up the Mark Rich affair where he was the prosecutor at Justice. He has long been in the pocket of the Clintons, which may explain why, even though he was forced to admit that Hillary had broken numerous laws regarding her email, he did not recommend her prosecution.
All right, one more. Who would you like to see replace Director Comey?
I think the president should appoint Judge Jeanine Pirro, a former prosecutor, a former judge, a woman of enormous legal savvy, a hard-nosed, by-the-book law enforcement person.
Okay, and just so you believe she's qualified, and do you believe that she has a chance of actually being appointed? And would this not be viewed as a Fox News appointee, someone from the right? I'm just saying, many are hoping, in the media at least, and you know how I feel about the media, for someone who would be above reproach, down the middle, no political agenda. Could Jeanine Pirro fill that bill?
I believe that she can. I cannot tell you whether she's under consideration. You asked me who I would like to see.
Right.
This fellow McCabe, who is the acting FBI director, not only attempted to use taxpayer money to pay for the phony dossier smearing candidate Trump, but his wife got $700,000 through a Clinton connection and Terry McAuliffe, which was clearly an inducement not to pursue Hillary's email matter.
Might you make your feelings known? Well, I'm sure he'll see it in the news today based on this interview, but might you make your feelings known to the president that that you would like to see Jeanine Pirro in there?
You know, Steve, I'm never going to characterize what the president and I do or do not talk about. I would like to talk to him more. I talk to him from time to time. I think he's doing a great job. But again, nobody tells Donald Trump what to do. There is no Karl Rove figure in this administration. It doesn't work that way. Trump is not some political mannequin who you give talking points to and he just goes out and reads them. That's not Trump. That's not the Trump we elected. I get disturbed when I see Ivanka Trump say on the front page of the New York Times that she views her job as moderating her father. I like Donald Trump just the way he is. That's the Trump I voted for. That's the Trump I love. I don't want him moderated. I want him to drain the swamp.
Do you think, you brought it up, do you think that she has succeeded in moderating? I mean, if there was one person who might influence Donald Trump and his decisions, do you think she's had an influence? And have you seen it? Do you know it and say that's not really good?
Well, I've seen it when it's been positive. I think the president's emphasis on women's health care issues during the campaign was a direct result of Ivanka bringing these issues to his attention and pointing out the inequities and problems that women have in this area. So it can be a positive influence. But if she is suggesting to the president that we open our doors and take in several 100,000 Syrian refugees, well, then it would be a negative influence.
All right, Roger, quickly, where could people check you out and follow you and hear your radio show and the whole thing?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Roger J. Stone Jr., Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. You can go to rogerstone.com and get my books. You can go to stonecoldtruth.com and see my daily political commentary. You can go to stonezone.com for archival matters. And, of course, Stone Cold Truth Radio is on the Genesis Communications Network every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
You know, there was a guy playing for the Ottawa Senators last night against the Rangers. His last name was Stone, and every time he touched the puck, my son and I looked at each other, and for some reason we just said, there goes Roger. Don't ask me why. Makes no sense, but that's what we did. Roger, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you.
Great to be here, Steve.